The satellite city streets in their memory were at least somewhat orderly, but here large chunks of broken crystal pipes are scattered everywhere. Uprooted sidewalk slabs reveal barren yellow sand beneath, and as they walk along, the view looks no different from the yellow zones. D36K KSK nods demurely and walks ahead with her weapon held at her ready. Vashti's eyes, which she can barely keep open most of the time, widen in shock. Vector racks her neural cloud, but she can't find any trace of the name. In her incomplete neural logs, someone runs over with a recruitment brief full of red crosses. The same person calls out to her through the thick glass while she is soaked in corrosive liquid. But the person's face is utterly blank. Vector freezes in bewilderment. As she glances uneasily at the camera that has been following them in silence, then awkwardly tries to comfort Vector. A building ahead of them collapses all of a sudden, emitting a deafening noise. A long-haired girl emerges from the swirling dust. She stumbles in this direction, followed by invaders that are chasing her relentlessly. B36KKSK gives the cowering girl a gentle squeeze on the shoulder. The girl, obviously very shaken, is still trembling all over. Above her head is a name tag that reads 416. "416 cranes her neck and starts bawling. Fat tears roll down from her eyes. Her usually cold and haughty face now looks almost pitiful. The two dolls walk up to 416, who suddenly jumps to her feet and grabs Meshti. "416 lets go of Meshti's and runs back in the direction she has come from. Vashti immediately drawn to the sofa near the entrance like a nail to a magnet, collapses into it. G36KKSK follows them into the house and stands quietly in the corner. Vector shakes her head in mild disbelief and walks up to 416, who is now by a bed in the room. She has to admit that the calm and quiet atmosphere here is quite relaxing. She decides not to bother waking Meshti. As Vector approaches the bed, 416 unfreezes and starts crying piteously while holding the hand of the person lying on the bed, who happens to be the the one laying on the bed with her eyes closed and her face pale is none other than Belka. But the name tag above her head reads GRG28. Hearing 416's voice, she musters her strength and opens her eyes just a crack. The watery green eyes turn to Vector and she suddenly understands how Meshti feels. Impactful indeed. Under 416's imploring gaze, Vector taps her watch and gives her a healing potion. Tries to prop GRG28 up from the bed, but she may have aggravated her wounds as GRG28 starts coughing violently. Meshti sits up on the sofa and rubs her eyes. She looks over at the bed. She rubs her eyes again. Meshti pats herself down frantically, but then she remembers she's on level 2. So she taps her watch. "416 dresses GRG-28's wounds lightly. GRG-28 finally directs her attention to Vector. Vector reads out the only option she's given. Vector recalls TMP, whom they have met earlier, and draws the mental connection. A gunshot erupts from behind. Like a slow motion scene in a movie, Vector watches as a bullet burrows out of her chest, passes through GRG-28's forehead, and leaves a black crater on the wall. The short NPC seems utterly unfazed. She continues to rattle off the pre-written script with great emotion despite the bullet hole on her head and the continuous gunfire. But Vector can no longer hear what she's saying. She turns around with great difficulty, only to see a smiling G36K KSK with her gun raised, and Meshti, who has flattened herself on the sofa in terror. Orbs of faint light appears where Vector has fallen. Meshti knows that they are Vector's dropped items. G36K KSK stretches out her hand and the lights fly into her palm like birds returning to their nest. The figure immersed in light begins to transform little by little. Andor's illuminated face is as calm, as serene as ever, but the color of the hair by her ears starts fading. Her body also droops like melted wax, and then it looks almost as if a pair of invisible hands are gently lifting her up and resculpting her. After the light has faded, she appears before Meshti like a patchwork portrait with all the colors and characteristics of the different 404 members. An eerie smile creeps across that uncanny patchwork face. Remotely controlling the terminal in the training room, Deer checks the code of the module and plug in row by row. Harpsy also nervously keeps her eyes glued to the terminal screen, not daring to relax at all. Meanwhile, Rushi and Welrod are keeping a close eye on the situation on level 2 at the surveillance monitor. At last, movement can be heard from the terminal nearby. Fear ponders in silence for a long while on the screen. The door slides open with a whoosh, followed by a set of angry footsteps. I followed Krukai into the room, eyeing the floorboards that she has just stomped over with concern. Her eyes sweep fiercely over everyone present before finally settling on deer on the screen. Meanwhile, on level 2. A dozen invaders are outside, staring hungrily at Vector in the phone booth. She checks her inventory and sighs at all the empty slots and her pitiful amount of ammo. Intense gunfire interrupts Vector's moping. She watches as the invaders outside are shot in the head one by one. The area around the phone booth is cleared in no time. A girl with corkscrew twin tails throws herself at the door of the phone booth, scaring Vector by squishing her face right up against the glass. With a frown, Vector opens the door and exits the phone booth. She dodges Rushi's flying tackle and makes her way over to Harpsy. Harpsy wrings her hands nervously. Belrod looks at Harpsy, who is standing next to Vector. With a nod, Harpsy tells Vector everything in a soft murmur. Spectre looks at Rushi and finds herself speechless. Rushi freezes for a moment, but then she beams. Elsewhere, Meshti, who has been frantically avoiding Koshmar's pursuit, is cowering inside a concrete drainage pipe. All of a sudden, a shadowy figure leans into the pipe. Meshti is so terrified. Her neural cloud is on the verge of shutting down. But once she makes out who it is, she lets out a sigh of relief. This fake Klukai is looking at her with wide, pitiful eyes. Unimpressed, Meshti shrinks back and waves her hand at her as if she were shooing away a puppy. A monstrously strong hand grabs Meshti and pulls her out of the pipe. Meshti is getting a bit disoriented. Before she can react, her view is suddenly turned upside down, and she feels herself being thrown headfirst into a cramped space. Fake Klukai lifts her chin. The face that looked so pitiful just a second ago is now full of disdain. With a look of disgust, Krokai shoves a hand into Maxi's face to stop her incoming embrace. Krokai sneers coldly. Mehdi gulps despite having no saliva. Her tone implies that this is far from over.